If you've ever tried to write a movie for yourself, you'll surely appreciate that it's no picnic. Making everything slot together in a way that's satisfying, entertaining, smart, and well-paced is hard as nails. I mean, there's a reason I stuck with YouTube video scripts instead, and I can't even get those right, so it's little surprise how many movies fail to keep it all together. It's never more frustrating though than when a movie boasts a great concept and gets so many things right, but then struggles when it comes to the most important part, the climax. And though in most cases the ending doesn't fully derail the film, it's consistently a low point across these movies, demonstrating that a killer setup sometimes just isn't enough. I'm Josh from Whatculture.com, and these are 10 movies they didn't know how to end. Number 10, The Wolverine. James Mangold's The Wolverine was conceived as an apology of sorts for 2009's critically panned solo outing X-Men Origins Wolverine, and you know what? For about 70% of its runtime, it's a pretty damn good movie. The first two acts of the film managed to balance character drama with satisfying action, but the finale disappointingly veers into the overly silly CGI-fueled shenanigans the previous solo movie was so widely criticized for. It all goes down the tubes when Logan is forced to battle the Silver Samurai, piloted by none other than his crusty old pal Ichiro Yoshida, in an attempt to steal Logan's healing factor. The fight itself is uninteresting and overly reliant on visual effects, and the Ichiro reveal is ultimately more comical than surprising. This is definitely a case where a less bombastic, more personal fight scene would have resulted in a far more effective and satisfying battle, as what we got basically played like someone scrawled it on a napkin the night before shooting. Number 9, Alien Covenant. Alien Covenant is by no means a great movie, but it does do a solid job of positioning malevolent android David as the new antagonist of the franchise, while serving up some pretty brutal death scenes in the process. But after fans complained that Prometheus wasn't enough like Alien in that it didn't feature a single xenomorph, Scott decided to remedy this by shoehorning some traditional xenomorphs into the final 20 minutes of his new movie. Up until that point, the film's characters had been fending off against a vicious new proto-xenomorph, and after the last of these creatures is killed, the focus appears to shift towards David being Covenant's ultimate antagonist. But of course, the final half hour of the movie gives the heroes not one but two classic xenomorphs to fight out of nowhere, before arriving at the hilariously predictable closing twist that yes, David has assumed the identity of the team's android Walter. The writers clearly knew they had to build to a finale that cemented David's villainy, but didn't really know how to fill in the blanks. And of course, when in doubt, xenomorphs, I guess. Number 8, Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman does so many things right, giving the iconic superhero one hell of a character-driven origin story aided by sharp direction, great production design, solid performances, and memorable action sequences. And for most of the film's runtime, it feels like Patty Jenkins was set to subvert the DCEU's typical CGI-slathered third act nonsense. But sadly, that's exactly where she decided to go in the end. In the apparent finale, Diana battles the evil General Ludendorff, believing him to be the god of war Ares. However, even once she kills him, she's horrified that his death doesn't stop the war. This honestly would have been a perfectly fine endpoint for the film though. After all, it's already pretty close to the 2-hour mark at this point, and in addition to serving as a potent commentary on man's self-destructive nature, it would have been a major turning point in Diana's character. But of course, the movie drags on for another half hour, as Patrick Morgan reveals himself to be the real Ares, and we get an ugly, overdone, unintentionally daft CGI battle. With a little narrative restructuring, Steve Trevor's sacrifice could still be the emotional linchpin of the third act, while erasing the lame fight altogether. Number 7, The Matrix Revolutions. This could really apply to both of the Wachowskis' Matrix sequels, which, while visually dazzling and jam-packed with awesome action, had no idea how to reach a satisfying climax. This is especially true of the final entry into the trilogy, The Matrix Revolutions, which built up to a tectonic mega brawl between Neo and Agent Smith, and still couldn't give fans a compelling send-off. As a whole, it feels like the Wachowskis visualized the ridiculous Dragon Ball Z-inspired final battle, and then reverse-engineered the rest of Revolution solutions from that concept. The battle itself, while undeniably silly, is at least creative and technically ambitious, and really should have led to a pretty straightforward conclusion where the Matrix is purged of Smith. Perhaps seeing this as too neat, the Wachowskis instead give fans an obtuse and anticlimactic ending where, after Smith is destroyed, Neo's code is returned to the source, whatever that means, and the precise nature of his non-existence is left infuriatingly ambiguous. Number 6. War of the Worlds 2005. It's no secret that H.G. Wells' 1989 novel on which the film is based ends on one of the most infamous anticlimaxes in pop culture history, with the alien invaders eventually succumbing to the hostile nature of Earth's atmosphere. And it's fair to say that Steven Spielberg couldn't find a way to rectify this for contemporary audiences in his otherwise pretty decent 2005 adaptation, with the director himself eventually admitting that he couldn't quite figure out how to end the film and wasn't satisfied with how it concluded. But beyond its total non-event of an ending, there's also the infuriating, inconceivable survival of protagonist Ray's idiot son, Robbie. Midway through the film, Robbie runs off into a battle and a gigantic explosion engulfs the area. But then he miraculously shows up in Boston at the end of the film with no believable explanation for his survival. Even for a sentimentalist like Spielberg, this came off extraordinarily hokey and totally implausible. Number 5. Bad Boys 2. Bad Boys 2 just might be the most Michael Bay movie that Michael Bay has ever made. It's visually stunning, brutally violent, obnoxiously childish, totally tone deaf, and about 30 minutes too long. The film seems set to climax with an epic raid on the mansion of Cuban drug lord Johnny Tapia. But once this oddly curtailed set piece is concluded, Tapia escapes and kidnaps Marcus's sister, taking her to Cuba. Now, what's basically a second climax of the movie unfolds, where Marcus and Mike raid Tapia's Cuban compound and the action finally resolves at a minefield outside Guantanamo Bay. Yes, really. Clearly, Bay had a lot of ideas for staging action sequences, but in the interest of efficiency, it would have made sense to combine these two set pieces into a single finale, moving the kidnapping up to before the initial mansion raid. Number 4. Now You See Me. Now You See Me is one of those infuriating movies that has a killer premise, a great cast, and plenty of great ideas, but no idea how to deliver on the follow-through. A gang of magicians known as the Four Horsemen who use their talents to rob banks should make for a pretty great movie, and indeed large sections of the finished film are deliciously entertaining. But the screenwriters clearly felt the pressure to deliver one final sleight of hand, the results of which were unconvincing to say the least. At the end of the film, it's revealed that FBI agent Dylan Rhodes was in fact the secret fifth member of the Horsemen the entire time, and the real mastermind behind their activities. This clumsy ending couldn't be more counter to the clever tricks deployed throughout the rest of the movie, and really brings the whole thing down a fair few notches. Number 3. Speed. The Keanu Reeves starring action thriller classic Speed is one of the greatest high-concept movies of all time, boasting an impossibly creative and intriguing premise about a commuter bus which is rigged to blow with explosives that will detonate if it drops below 50 miles per hour. Yet, as ludicrously entertaining as the film is, it also hits a bit of a roadblock deep into the third act. With the bomb-on-bus scenario resolved at the 90-minute mark, the film needlessly continues for almost another half hour, as Jack Traven hunts down bomb maker villain Howard Payne. This over-egged climax was not actually part of Graham Yost's original script, but Fox in all their glory refused to greenlight the film without a rewrite which added more exterior action to the flick, believing that audiences wouldn't want to watch a movie set solely on a bus. And though it's still pretty entertaining, the movie really felt like it was done once the bus was evacuated. Number 2. Glass. Glass was touted as the epic final showdown between the heroic David Dunn, split personality monster Kevin Wendell Crumb, and the genius supervillain that is Mr. Glass. And though the film builds solidly enough to its inevitable final fight, only the fate of Mr. Glass himself is particularly satisfying, dying after having most of the bones in his body broken by Kevin's horde. Kevin, meanwhile, is shot dead by a sniper in largely unceremonious fashion. But the real kicker is that David Dunn, our illustrious hero, is drowned in a puddle by an anonymous goon working for Dr. Ellie Staple. The surviving relatives and friends of the three characters are then left to upload video footage of their superhuman actions to YouTube for the world to see, and then that's basically it. David Dunn dies in a puddle, man. I still cannot get over that. Number 1. Law-abiding citizen. Law Abiding Citizen is one of the finest guilty pleasure films of the last decade, a deliciously trashy thriller about a genius engineer, Clyde Shelton, who seeks to avenge his murdered family by brutally killing both the perpetrators and those who failed him in the criminal justice system. And though Shelton's vengeful behavior quickly gets wildly out of hand, thanks to Butler's deliciously scene-chewing performance, he's easily the most charismatic and likable character in the entire film. This makes the ending rather awkward then, as Jamie Foxx's charisma vacuum of a hero, Nick Rice, a lawyer concerned more with his win-loss record than actual justice, tricks Shelton by hiding his own bomb in his jail cell, killing him. Given that the film made Shelton so easy to root for, even as he plans to blow up City Hall, having the arrogant lawyer outsmart him seems implausible at best and deeply unsatisfying at worst. The audience wanted Shelton to win, damn it. Rumors have persisted in the decades since the film's release that Jamie Foxx forced the ending to be changed so that his character prevailed, though there's still no confirmation on that end.